Hi, everybody. This is the last of the discernment process of that they may be one. This would be day 9. And I may do a summation video. I haven't decided yet. I took a few days off struggling with this, what to share, and nothing really gelled. And so I'm going to wing it, which I want to do sometimes. The issues I'm going to discuss for us to reflect on and for you to take your time reflecting on if you find any value in it. It kind of draws from the whole culture war thing, but I'm not going to really necessarily use the language or the perspectives of the culture war as much as just identify that which has been called the culture war is really a coin with two sides. And so as that affects our sense of unity, it affects our sense of unity in the sense that I am right and you are wrong. I am righteous and you are unrighteous. I have a holy cause and you have an unholy cause. I will demonize you, that kind of thing. And I will feel good about demonizing you because I am right, okay? And I am on the right side of history. That's a big thing nowadays. And if I take that perspective, I dehumanize you and I dehumanize everyone who disagrees with me. And that's part of the problem. That works against unity because I don't recognize the value of you as a human being. I don't respect life. How's that for a term? In you. I don't respect God's presence in you. I don't see it. I diminish your worth. And that allows me to do these things and say these things and post outlandish, untrue thing, whatever it is, whatever the perspective is. And so that's what we're going to discuss. I need to identify that in myself. And very blatant commercial here. I feel like Wayne's World. If you really want to know what the thinking is on this, I'd really recommend you get this book. It's not that large a book. Came out, around, it was during COVID, around the time of the election is when it actually came out in 2020. And everything in here is very current. They say, well, it's 4 years old. It's discussing, well, let me read some of the titles to you, some of the titles of the chapters. Smoke and Mirrors, Words Matter, The Premised Land. This is discussing premises. A smattering of perspective. Then it gets into the issues. So the first part was the process, and then it gets into the issues. The flag, Black Lives Matter, pro-life, pro-choice, pro-fear, and accusation. A chicken in every pot and a gun in every hand. Chapter 9, The Death of Reason, the either-or trap, or other false dichotomies. Chapter 10, The Politics of Sexuality. Chapter 11, The Separation of Church and State and Swallowing a Camel. The whole idea of swallowing a camel, I really like that one. Chapter 12, now this is the one where I'm completely unobjective. I don't even try to be objective on this one. The emperor is butt naked. The Trump problem, the us problem. In other words, he exists because of us. Chapter 13, The Millstone and the Trap, an epistle to Christians. So I really recommend, if you want to get into the meat of the reasoning here, I would recommend this. So I'm going to get into Chapter 7, Pro-Life, Pro-Choice, Pro-Fear, and Accusation. Because in that, in that chapter, identify how people regard each other. And this is hypothetical. I'm not a woman, and I'm kind of playing the role of two different women, okay, in this. And so this is one of the things that I try to reflect upon counseling experience, the whole idea of reflecting, and then saying, having someone mediation, what did you hear him say? What did you hear her say? Is this what you mean? Trying to clarifying things. And sometimes we talk past each other. And so I have this hypothetical, very pro choice individual and very pro life individual, and what they think of the other, or what one perceives the other thinks about them. And that is the kind of thing I want to build upon in terms of prayer and reflection, and what that which allows us to demonize the other person. But what is the other person hearing? Many pro choice advocates receive these messages from pro lifers, intended or not. The experience of women is irrelevant. Women don't matter. Giving birth to children is the only thing that gives a woman meaning or significance. Women don't need to be paid as much as men because they should be staying home with the children anyway, and equal pay will pull them away from their womanly duties at home. We know what is best for you, and you certainly are not capable of making serious decisions on your own for yourself. The suffering and emotional turmoil of women and girls in unwanted pregnancies is insignificant in that they created the situation as a direct result of their deficient moral character. You don't matter. So, in many ways, the pro choice woman may feel accused in this way. And then what's the flip side? How about the pro-life woman? What is she hearing? How is a young woman not to interpret this brand of reasoning as anything other than a defining of the role of a woman to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen? Okay, that was the summation of the other. On the flip side, many pro-lifers receive these messages from pro-choice advocates, intended or not. We are more evolved than you and your primitive religious beliefs. Motherhood is a definite disadvantage and should be treated as such. Our sense of womanhood is vastly superior to yours. Women who have children and choose to stay home with them are brainwashed. Pro-lifers are inherently ignorant and are living in the past. We refuse to work with anyone on any women's issues if they do not support reproductive rights as we define them. And until you think like us, believe like us, and march in unwavering lockstep to our one issue, then we have no use for you. You don't matter. Now you can see these are very extreme, and I wanted to use that since the whole idea of pro-life, pro-choice, Roe versus Wade has become a political football. We get stuck in the ideological side of it and forget what we're doing to the other person in our positions, not reflecting. And so what's important here is objectively in the formation of conscience, which is important, and then I have to consider my relationship with other people, is, as I stated in probably the previous session, there is no difference politically between voting for Republican or Democrat. They may say, I believe this, or I believe that, but the Democrats are pursuing a path which they have historically wanted to pursue in terms of reproductive rights. The Republicans have found it politically expedient to play the game of how many weeks will we allow an abortion to take place? And would it be 6 weeks? Oh, I feel good about that. 12 weeks, maybe so. The heartbeat, all of those things. But it doesn't matter where they put that demarcation point. It's after conception. So these are the issues that, if I'm going to be Catholic and say I'm Catholic and say I believe what the church teaches, then this is an issue I really need to grapple with, okay? And I'm going to play devil's advocate again. So if I say I am Catholic, and not only am I going to vote for someone who's pro-choice, but I may be pro-choice myself. I may be thinking, there are those exceptions. There are all those times that who knows when a woman, she may not have the finances or something, I really don't think the unborn child is a human being. I really do not believe that. Okay? And if I really don't believe that, then I can't fully understand the church's teaching. If I don't understand the dignity of the living person in the womb, then every other ideological argumentation I can come up with that is pro-choice is based on thin air from a Catholic perspective. I have justified and rationalized. I've committed my own form of heresy. I'm going to believe this, and I'm going to believe this, and I'm going to believe that, but I'm not going to believe this. That doesn't work. And as most Americans and artificial contraception, I'm not going to believe that either. Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, okay, I may be thinking that I am a good pro-lifer, but I am communicating a complete disdain for women in all of my other issues, okay? If I really am not fighting for equal work, equal pay for equal work, if I'm really not believing a woman when she says this happened to me, if I'm really not a person that says, if we believe in family, then we need to do everything medically for prenatal care for everybody, for every woman in this country. So we wouldn't have these disparities. And women would feel free to breastfeed in the workplace and have their child in childcare. And the childcare is being paid for by the company. I value the family. I value everything about life and the family. If I am not consistent there, and again, I've mentioned that before, then I'm just anti-abortion. And I am not reflecting the wholeness of the gospel. And, but I think I have the higher moral ground. So those are the kinds of things that we need to look at. Now I'm going to refer to, just because it got a little lost, the coin and both sides of the coin. I'll refer again to the word sarkikos. And sarkikos, sarx, flesh, refers to worldliness. And I will say that the false dichotomy between this culture and that culture in the culture wars is that there's a presumption that my culture is superior to the other culture. So if it's the older culture, I want to go back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, where the way things used to be was superior. And I'll judge the present culture as sex-obsessed and drug-obsessed and selfish and self-centered and, on and on and on. I just think that it's immoral and LGBTQ issues, those were not issues 40 years ago. And I see this moral decline. So since I have this wonderful sense sitting on high of the moral decline of that culture, then I think that my culture is a superior culture. And I don't have to deal with the fact that that older culture I'm defending is the same culture that imprisoned Japanese Americans, did not give African American veterans the same opportunity with the GI Bill as white Americans, so on and so forth. That's the same culture. It came from all of that, and I want to defend that. From the church perspective, the way really churchy people do it, they say, well, this scandal in the church and child abuse and all that, it's because of where the church is right now. Well, let's get a little bit of historical fact. Most of the cases that were beginning to show up were from the 60s and 70s, which means the priests that were committing these heinous crimes were priests whose formation was in the 40s and the 50s when they were in the seminary. Some of these seminarians were molested by other priests in this very holy, purely Latin church. Okay, so before we make this big contrast between the church now and the church then and get in that culture war, we have to understand that we as a church failed And the initial crime, the initial sin of the abusers, and probably the greater communal sin of the bishops who did the lateral shifts. And so the whole idea that we're that older culture was superior, I don't think so. Now let's look at the other side of the coin. If I am going to think that, well, now I'm more advanced, I'm more evolved, we're rejecting all of those things. Well, maybe not, okay? Maybe I am just playing the same power game in a different way to my advantage. What I don't understand as a Catholic is that when Humanae Vitae came out, Pope Paul VI, in the 60s, one of the points it was trying to illustrate is it's not so much just the issue of the value of human life, of the unborn child, but that's our sexual relationships and how they will devolve as a result of free sex, okay? Lack of true intimacy, lack of commitment. And that's pretty much what happened. As a matter of fact, when Roe versus Wade was first established, and all the supporters of Roe versus Wade were thinking this is great, they would have been horrified to think of abortion as just another form of contraception. But that's really what it's become. And the culture has shifted in such a way that women are dehumanized, okay? Because the expectations of, a woman's sexuality and her sexual needs and all that needs to be just the same as a man. Why emulate a bad model, a bad example? Men have always been self-absorbed and self-serving. Men have always sought to have the advantage and followed the power model instead of the servant model, have followed the control model instead of the cooperation model, and the competition and all that. And women have followed that. And historically, since the 60s, heart disease has gone up because of smoking, lung cancer went up. All of those things where they're trying to be these really cheap version of men, well, women were paying the cost because they weren't valuing the gifts that women have, the gifts that women have to bring to the table. And so I have to understand that I am just in another worldly, power-obsessed culture, which is just the flip side of the other one. And so discernment means I really need to get into my conscience, okay? I really need to bring all of these issues, and I wanted to, kind of in a superficial way, but in a concrete way, understand how these cultural differences occur and how other people are interpreting them. And I'm gonna share a very quick story about how culture shifts, and perhaps for the enlightened ones, they can understand how some of us older people are feeling. Here in El Paso, Texas, there was a long history of lighting the star at Christmas. And I remember there was a gentleman named Ted Bender. There would be a star lighting, and it's a star that we have on the mountain with all these lights. And it was a Christmas event. Essentially, it was to celebrate the religious holiday of Christmas. It was a secular kind of a thing, but it wasn't over religious, but it was recognizing that it is the Christmas season, and it was something to look forward to. Well, what happened when Iran had the hostages, and that occurred during a period of time when the star was lit, the decision was made that the star will be lit until the hostages come home. So it ran for the whole year, which would have been the last year of the Carter administration. And if you all recall your history correctly, Reagan and his people made, shall I say, political communications, that the hostages would be released. I think it was 440 days or something like that. It's a Dixie Drag song. But anyway, what happened is it became very, very, very secular. And the religious meaning was lost throughout the whole year. Oh, this, for a good reason. This is to remember the hostages. We don't want to forget them. And then, as the star lost its religious significance, the lighting of the star was no longer a Christmas event. It was something that people could pay for to celebrate this or commemorate that. Or that's just a very gradual cultural shift that removed religion entirely from something, or going from BC and AD, which has been around for a couple of thousand years, right, to the modern era, right. What I can't even remember the Common Era, and before the Common Era. It's just when did that happen? Okay, or in our language, there used to be actors and actresses. An actress. Well, then actress was passé. You no longer say actress, except during the Academy Awards. Then there's awards for actress. I don't get that. Then you bring in all the LGBTQ stuff, and I am not what I am. I am what I believe that I am, and that's what I am, and that's what he is or she is or whatever. Very, very confusing for some of us other folks, and it's very dismissive of everything that's gone before. The problem is there's no dialogue. These changes take place, and there's no real dialogue. So I use that as an example of where there's struggle between generations, a sense of nostalgia for things, how things used to be. Where that affects our faith is we don't realize how much we have in common. So this was the longest of all of them, and I just wanted you to understand with these stories, we have to take the time to appreciate what the others are going through, okay? We have to take the time to appreciate their struggles, their perspectives, and not judge the sanctity of personal conscience. As long as the conscience is well developed, is well informed. So I don't want anyone fooling themselves that they're taking a Catholic position voting for Democrat or Republican. And I don't want anybody swayed by someone getting you to vote this way or getting you to vote that way, such as Heritage Foundation or Catholic Vote, both really atrocious organizations, in my opinion, because they are taking on cultural, ideological perspective, and they do not represent the Catholic faith, belief community. Do not. And so reflect on all of these things. Don't be pushed, don't be bullied, but don't lie to yourself on how you form your conscience. The whole idea of holding your nose as you vote, you know, that may be valid for some people, but we have to be more informed than that. And just to end it up, I know from the Catholic perspective, it's sacrosanct that you have to vote, you have to vote, you have to vote. Well, that hasn't always been, there hasn't always been democracies. They want us to participate in our community. They think that's important. That's a very wonderful thing. But I think this particular election cycle, people of good faith, people of goodwill, who have tried in good faith to form their conscience, may in good faith reach the conclusion that they will not vote. And that's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. So be kind to each other, be loving, try to understand the other side, even if you don't agree. Try to understand their struggle and their perspective. But don't act as if you have the Catholic answer and the Catholic perspective for everybody. You have the perspective that God has given you from walking the journey that you've walked. And you are responsible for finding out what is moral, what is not moral, and how are you going to choose every step in your life, and what are the decisions that you're going to make. So I ask you to pray about all of this and really break free of the chains which hold you to your cultural perspective, to your cultural ideologies, because they do not serve God in the least. Goodbye.